Agored and Crystal panel. Good morning and welcome everyone to this meeting of the Education Comisiynu Quality Committee. I'd like to welcome Addysg, who's online this morning and will be presenting an item on the education and training plan. And also we have Leopold Jones, who is the head of Pwyllgor and the Welsh language unit, who's observing. So, and I have my colleague IMs who are both joining online today. I did say I felt slightly alone down this end of the table. Yeah, but I did feel amongst friends. So we haven't had any apologies for absence that I've been aware of. No? Good. That's what I like to hear. So first of all, do we have any declarations of interest previously been notified for any item this morning? No? Good. So we've got a consent agenda this morning, and we put those items. We have not had any comments or anybody wanting to take those items off the consent agenda. So on that basis, I can approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of November, and that we've reviewed the action log. We also have the Education Procurement Board highlight report there, and we were specifically asked to note the extensive level of procurement work in progress and to note that report for information and progression to the HEIW executives. Was there anything under matters arising that people wanted to bring out that they don't feel was covered in this morning's agenda? No. Good. Well, we're already on part 3, which is the education performance and quality section and the individual education and training quality assurance reports. So we'll start with the medical report. Anton, I think you're presenting. Can I remind all presenters this morning that we have had the papers, and I know my colleagues will have been through them in great detail. So if we can just, have a brief introduction, a couple of key highlights, and we use the majority of the time for questions and discussion. Anyway, over to you, Anton.
Sorry. I'm really sorry to interrupt. I have got a couple of amendments to the minutes from last time.
Right.
Sorry if I missed that.
Yeah, so Margaret, just in case I haven't picked up on that, what we're trying to do now is that we won't go through them. If you do have something there, I think it was yesterday we needed to have people to come back by Monday. However, if there are,
okay, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, Margaret, would you like to highlight those for us?
No?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. I apologise if I've missed that communication. So basically, in the pharmacy report, in the first paragraph at the bottom, it says it was confirmed that pharmacy undergraduate numbers have preschool as well as subscribed, and the number of pharmacists may not meet the demand of trainee pharmacists. And then the other was a paragraph that states last but one paragraph in regard to independent prescribers. It was confirmed that as independent prescriber competency was rolled out, I think it should be stated that it is the exact wording, the HEIW standards for competency assurance of independent and supplementary prescribers in Wales. Sorry, you need to be very specific what that is. So that was the only 2 amendments.
Thank you for that, Margaret. With those amendments, then now
and yes,
are accurate. Apologies. Right. Sorry, Anton. Would you like to your update?
Very much, Chair. I will be brief. The report speaks for itself. I think there's a few things I wanted to point out. We have 4 departments currently at our highest level of escalation, which is enhanced monitoring, and they are listed and they are well known to everybody in ECPC because we've presented on them before. And those are internal medicine and ADUHB, and there's some improvement being seen there. Cardiology in UHW, cardiothoracic surgery from a programmatic point of view, and emergency medicine at Charles Hospital. I had a little bit of an update from yesterday. So yesterday, the General Medical Council wrote to folks in Prince Charles at CDM UHB to notify them that we are now, that progress has not been as rapid as has been expected. You will remember that issues were around trainer support. Within the clinical environment, things are taking longer than expected, and the regulators make the want to see some improvement by the next. So that happened yesterday. Roof replacement work in Prince of Wales Hospital is keeping us all busy, and there's a lot of work going on to mitigate training, and that is working well at the moment. And specialty recruitment rates, around 3 recruitments for secondary care, has decreased a little bit, 56%, with vacancies in some areas that we have discussed before, and I'm expecting questions. So this is not surprising or very unusual for the United Kingdom at this point in time, but it's a little bit lower than expected. General practice recruitment rates for GP training, however, has been very excellent in post-cold. And at this time, there's also additional identified training capacity that can be used in general practice, which we are pleased with. We have undertaken last year's round of education quality training commissioning meetings with our LAD partners, where we discussed both operational and strategic issues in a very medically focused, but more and more multi-professional kind of way to make plans together with outputs, and that's gone according to plan, being reported, fed back to the admin team. Things in which we are developing or providing support, for example, around faculty development, CPD, targeted learning events, etc., has gone well, is on track, and we've got great engagement in that. Also with our SAS and our locally employed colleagues. I had the privilege of attending the recent SAS conference to give the update on our HA. And I'm very pleased to say that after support for looking at the way we look at lay representatives, and lay representatives are very important for our work in medicine and the rest of HA. We have successfully recruited a number of lay representatives. I think we've recruited 12. And that means that by the way in which we publicize, recruit, and remunerate our lay representatives, we also keep the diversity of that group significantly, which we're very pleased about. Work picking up safely is going on, and I'm sure you've noted the real innovative success we've had with our course, which was shared between many specialities, as something that we're looking to continue to do and maximize the opportunities. So I think, Chair, that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Anton. I'm going to open it out to questions. And Judith.
Yeah, thank you. Anton, thank you for the report, all the information. I want to focus on the part about the enhanced monitoring, etc. And reading this now for sort of, a few times, I'm sort of left with the question, so what? So the information's there and you tell us the update, so I can see where there's progress. But now I think every single health board in Wales has got somewhere that is under monitoring. Now, I don't know if that is unusual. I don't know if there are regions in England that have got a similar number of hospitals with that sort of position within secondary care, where Scotland have all their hospitals in Scotland got similar issues. And also, I just would want to know what health boards are doing collectively. Do they share the information? Are they sharing the issues and the solutions? Because some of these things may need to lead to service redesign, but I know that's not for HIW, but if we're continually seeing training not coming up to this necessary standard, then at what stage, I know you have the ability to remove trainees, but at what stage are health boards actually sharing this information and coming together to see how they're actually addressing the issues?
Thank you, Judith. That's a really good question, and I will answer that in part, and then Tom might want to add something. So there are quite a lot of concerns in this 4 areas in enhanced monitoring, and we've got quite a significant register. It's really important to remember that most of our doctors in training, or our residents, are really happy with their training. So most of the training in Wales is actually pretty good. So and the GMC training survey overall satisfaction is way above 80%. So what we are focusing on is only areas of concern, and that is true. We're a smallish country, and we've got health boards and trusts which work together quite a lot already, but we've also have quite a lot of mechanisms of seeing where issues are coming up, and we're addressing them quite early, I think is fair to say. Some issues are going to be more long-term than others, and this might be things around workload, for example, rotas, the pressures of clinical service, etc. You're absolutely correct that every health board in Wales has its issues, and I don't know, because it's so different in the various deaneries in England, but everybody has training programs which are at risk and is not meeting the requirements of the training program. In terms of working together, there is a network of meetings which we have at several levels across the health boards. So this is at our level of faculty leads and training program directors, which meet together. And then the health boards has got with the equivalent of directors of medical education, or we call them assistant medical directors, and we facilitate a meeting of that group several times a year so that they can share challenges across areas. We do have areas where there is a problem across training programs, not just on sites, and that we have shared with medical directors, chief executives, and boards, so that they can look at what the implications could be. So I hope that answers part of your question. Or the question.
Yes. So just to follow up, thank you, Judith. I think what you're asking is about patterns and themes, both within and across health board and across other regions of the UK.
Yeah.
We have a fairly central role in ensuring that themes are picked out in that area across Wales. And as Anton has just said, there is a well-established network, and we do ensure sharing of those lessons across that network if they are not isolated local ones. So, for example, the cardiothoracic issue that is on there is one where service delivery is identified as a fundamental problem contributing to training that requires further exploration, and that is fed into the leads that look at those arrangements to consider further actions. I think with regards to the enhanced monitoring, it's just a flag. We know we're not now. This is a process that is overseen by the GMC, who do have the comparative data across the UK and do look at those areas. And we have that assurance from them that we are not an outlier in terms of that enhanced level of monitoring.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. Thank you. I suppose my question was really about how do we know if this is impacting on the choices junior doctors are making in terms of where they come, and is it affecting recruitment in Wales? The numbers don't seem to suggest it is, but then I don't know. I suppose that I was looking, it was that question in my head, well, so what? What does all this mean in terms of our ability to attract and retain doctors in the various specialties? So thank you for that.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. Just following on that, I did notice sort of Wrexham psychiatry was under both an escalation section and an improvement section, and that might have been because of the timescale that we since our last meeting. But I just wondered where they actually were. So they were under sort of escalation, psychiatry, Wrexham Minor Hospital.
I think there are two different grades.
And then it was that, oh right, so it's two distinct issues rather than.
Yes, sorry, and that is the risk of some of the detail that we're putting in here, that there are many subsections to each bit. So I think it's different grades.
Right. And then obviously, and I know we have discussed it before, but it is concerning when we see that the secondary care fill rates are down again, you know. And the question has to be, you know, what are we doing? What can we do? Why are we seeing this?
Okay, so this is important, and this is something that we are looking at. We have to look at, and we are looking at constantly. So when we say secondary care fall rates, these refers to round 3 fall rates. So there's already been a round 1, a round 2. This is a round 3, the last round, which starts in February. So people sort of have to apply during their summer holidays for a start in February, usually. The final position is 56%, which is lower than we've had before, but usually it's not. It hasn't been higher than 70%. Those posts are a combination of posts that have been rolled over from round 2 that hasn't been filled, as well as posts that traditionally has been hard to fill, and I think those are the ones that you're specifically asking about. And then there are specific anomalies. For example, emergency medicine, higher entry at ST3. We're not recruiting into it because that's an alternative entry point, and people have entered at another point. So that's for that one. However, there are posts, for example, genitourinary medicine, geriatric medicine, which has got low fall rates, and that's across the UK. And that's something that's currently not really in our control, because those fall rates are related, I believe, to a change in the curriculum, which has been introduced, which has made those specialities maybe something that somebody doesn't look at in the first instance. And so we have to make some innovative changes there. When it comes to psychiatry, there is some interesting dynamics. We have put a lot of work into the core levels of psychiatry, and we've expanded those posts quite a lot, but it's not translating into lots of full higher posts. And the question is, why not? And we know that may be because for folks who are on those training posts who want to apply for it, they have many options of other things they can do. And they can choose an abundance of locally employed posts. They can go away and come back, and we think it's early. We may see those folks coming back to apply for posts. We have some survey data from the core group for last year and the year before, which may indicate that they are looking for more flexibility. So we are looking at the secondary care force, but just to put it into perspective, this is round 3.
Yeah, I think those of us that don't live and breathe it like you do, that is a helpful explanation actually, because we get fixated on a number and don't understand it in the context of, as you say, rounds, etc. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions for Anton? Well, in which case we're asked to note the paper providing the update on quality postgraduate medical training assurance. Thank you. Dentistry, Kirsty.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Chair. Morning, I will take the paper as read. And some brief updates on the 1.1 in recruitment for our Welsh Enhanced Recruitment Offer. I can tell you that as of today, we had 49 applied for 16 places that we have shortlisted to 31 for interview. Really encouraging, very strong field. It's very strong. If you want to remain in Wales, majority of those are from Cardiff University, so seeking to remain. In terms of the number of training places and practices, as of today, we have sufficient applications. However, that is still a risk to us in terms of practices handing their NHS contracts back at the end of the financial year. So it remains a risk, and that we are, we cannot mitigate at the moment. The remainder of the paper is as read. On the bullying and harassment, which were two particular points that were flagged at the last meeting. We did some further deep dive into that, and as reported on the papers, 6 trainees did experience, with the comments there, ranged from lack of support, some rarely feel that there are any problems. So that we have done some more work in there, and we have gone into each unit and raised concerns where they were identified. The transport one is, again, a range of challenges were reported there, including parking on hospital sites for study days where they take place, and a lack of public transport options to get to and from study days. And I just remind the committee that dental study days are hands-on, so are limited to specific sites where there are hands-on clinical skills facilities. That's all I would like to say.
Thank you. Questions? I've got one, and you touched on it there, which was around the sort of placement opportunities, and you talked about the potential losses through the NHS, people having their NHS contract, and I just wondered, and it might not be appropriate to have in this particular paper, but the data on practice losses, are we seeing that ramping up? Are there more? What sort of kind of numbers of practices have we got now in comparison with a year or 2 years ago?
So in terms of training,
Yeah.
we've maintained sufficient number of practices.
Yeah.
Last year we had to withdraw 3 places from national recruitment because contracts were handed back mid-year, and which impacted on the number of places. In terms of the number of practices that have NHS contracts, whether or not that's reduced, Welsh Government have that information. So we could look to find the information in terms of the trends. We have sufficient to maintain training presently, but it remains a risk. Given, and we're trying to work with health boards a bit more closely and with dental directors across the health boards to identify other opportunities. So where they have training units, that we might be able to encourage them to get NHS contracts in to deliver training in those areas. So we're trying to look at other ways so we're not entirely reliant on NHS high street practices. But at the moment, we have sufficient. We can look at to get data for you for next meeting in terms of trends.
I was just looking at trend and just wanted to understand where the tipping point might be. How close are we to the fact that we may start to run into issues with having insufficient?
Close, and it's not unique to us. So it's across the UK.
And just on a positive, I was really pleased to see how the training induction day. I just thought that was a really good thing to just see people come together. So well done. Thank you. So there aren't any other questions. We're asked to note the contents for assurance. Thank you, Chris. Pharmacy, Margaret.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of points for noting. Recruitment pre-registration pharmacy technicians. You can see there that the fill rate for our community pharmacy employee posts is only 50%. But we are working hard through now having access to data, which we didn't have before. That data is now coming through and is currently being validated and will help us to really understand what the demand is and therefore what numbers we should be training. We also having some close conversations with our community pharmacy contractors to understand how we can support them to come forward and put their potential candidates through our training programme. There's a bit of a misunderstanding about the training programme, what we need from them. So we're doing some really intensive work with them to try and make sure they understand the calibre of candidate as well as the benefits of coming to our programme. So that was just to reiterate that from the point of view of our trainee pharmacist foundation programme. As you can see there, we have good fill rates and we have good success rates. We have had attrition from our fill rates. Our fill rates are historically 100%. We have got attrition, but as it notes there in the paper, to some extent that's beyond our control. However, the 25-26 programme, we're anticipating a lesser attrition because we will have 2 points of entry into our foundation programme as part of our accreditation requirements, which means if they haven't passed their M-Farm completely at August, they have time to resit and then come into the later point. So I think there are a number of things, as well as we have people waiting who haven't been allocated to a training post, who are waiting potentially for any available. So we're hoping attrition rate in our 25-26 is going to be less, and we're going to be more close to our initial fill rate of 100%. Just to highlight in the programme development on page 4 for our trainee pharmacists, a lot of work is happening this year because there are big changes to our 25-26 programme to incorporate the new learning outcomes and independent prescribing. There has been a lot of work to ensure that we have the quality framework around that to ensure that we actually meet the GPHC requirements as well as maintain the quality of our programme. And finally, on page 4 over to 5, just to give the committee assurance that journey that we've been on in undergraduate clinical placements, which have been quite new for us. We've had an external evaluation of that with some recommendations, which you can see there, that we have actually enacted alongside our partners, whether that be the universities or the training sites. So we feel comfortable that the rollout of that new offering of clinical placements in undergraduates has now got the robust quality measures around it. There was nothing in the evaluation of real concern. It was more just sort of fine tweaking. So there wasn't any real concerns, but we are just fine tuning that to make sure that we have closed all opportunities for quality. That was it for me.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions? Margaret, it's a very comprehensive report. Oh, sorry, Judith, just.
No, it's okay. We're switching screens, so not as nippy on the mouse. Yeah, thank you very much, Margaret. It's not really a question. I just wanted to comment and say well done for the issue right at the bottom of page 5 about the trainee pharmacy, the foundation, and the fact that the work that you've done here within Wales has now been accepted across the UK as the standard. So I thought that was really, really positive and very good. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, well said, Judy. Thank you. Yeah, but thank you for that update, Margaret. And again, we are asked to note the report of assurance, which we've done. Thank you. Nick, yeah, that's poetry report.
Yeah, thank you. Hope everybody's had the opportunity to have a look. I just wanted to draw your attention to a couple of items. We have commissioned some further qualifications in March, and the fill rates continue to be very good. In terms of then looking at the impact of our commissioning on what is happening in eye care in Wales, in table 1.2 on page 3, I've tried to indicate to the committee how each qualification links with service and what we do as HIW in that space. And then, as you can see on pages 3 and 4, I've looked at what data there is available to try and understand what impact we're having. At the moment, as you can see, we're limited in terms of what data we have access to, but what we've started to get is data to trickle through in terms of numbers of patients that are being seen in each service and those practices in each health board that are offering the service. So we know which practices we've sponsored an optometrist to complete the qualifications, enable them to deliver the services, so we can start to see that in terms of table 1.3, for example, in an Ira and Bevan, 58% of practices in an Ira and Bevan that offer independent prescribing, we know we've sponsored people in those practices to provide that service via their qualification. The remainder are usually down to historical private funding, so they would have funded themselves. If you're wondering why it's not 100%. So those are the main items that I wanted to bring your attention to in the report. We are desperate to try and show exactly what impact we're having. So I hope this starts to give some a lens on the impact, but we will have better data in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Again, I'll open it out to questions. Judith?
Sorry, me again. Thank you, Nick. I wanted to ask a question about the table on page 4, mainly in terms of, is this shared with all the health boards so they can see where they are and where they are against others? Because I suppose I'm sort of mindful at the back of this are an awful lot of patients. I know we've talked about this, who are waiting for treatment. The cataract lists are very long, glaucoma lists are very long. And I just wonder whether it is shared at all so that so the health boards can see where they are against each other.
Yes, there's a monthly meeting that I attend with all the optometric advisors where there's updates, and with Welsh Government as well, on what services are being provided where and how they're getting on. The pace of change is very slow, particularly for the glaucoma and the medical retina. Welsh got 4 services, so there's been a lot of activity about that. I've been sitting on working groups this week to try and have a look at where the problems lie, why some health boards are able to start services and some aren't.
Yeah, okay, it's a puzzle to me, and I know that's not necessarily for us, but I'm surprised that it isn't being pushed more from the executive management exec or Welsh Government, really, considering the number of people waiting. But thank you, Nick, for that.
It's being pushed hard, it's fair to say, particularly at the moment, which is why the working group's been set up, particularly to look at where there are these disparities in the services starting. It's fair to say that where services are starting, I think there is traditionally good links between primary and secondary care. And there's been a number of measures from the first working group that we're trying to instigate to make things or improve, really, particularly around the governance to assure more ophthalmologists of why they should be sending out the patients.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, really, but thank you for that.
Thanks, Nick. I've got just a couple of questions. One's on the first page of the report, under key issues, and there was the discussion there about we might be too late to procure courses for September, and single tender agreement might be needed. And I know there are certain colleagues within the organisation who are not keen on single tenders. So can you perhaps just give a little bit of an update on that?
Yeah, so we've been working to put the what do they call it, the frameworks in place so that we can go out to other universities to procure the qualifications. So that work's been going on with the procurement team. And recently they've said that they're unlikely to get this in place for June. Normally we would start to go out to Cardiff University traditionally in a single tender to ensure we've got spaces on the courses ready for September and June. So we are working hard with procurement to try and ensure that we do get that framework in place before, but there is a risk there certainly that we potentially might have to extend the single tender.
But work is in train.
Yes.
So that was the first one. Second question I had was just around talking about the higher certificates and the independent prescribing, and it says that the academic and placement components can take up to 2 years or more to complete, and total therefore is 2 years. I mean, is that something? Is that longer than you would like it to be, or is it about right? I'm just sort of trying to gauge from my own, because I don't have the understanding about whether there's something in there that would
Yeah, sure. So the academic component will last 2 terms. Then they have to do their placement. Ideally, so the placement for independent prescribing is they have to do 24 sessions, 12 days. So in theory, be as short as that. There is a time limit of 2 years. So once you add that into the academic component, that's why it could take 3.
Yeah.
Certainly, it's not. We don't want people to be taking that long. It's an issue that we through the advanced training practices trying to circumvent away the problems that optometrists have trying to get placements in secondary care. We've also stepped into more kind of arranging of placements, working with ophthalmology, so that we're trying to reduce that time.
And that was where my question was coming from, really, because it did seem quite an extended period. And again, given Judith's comments about our, desire to, the waiting list to get which was we had, then yeah, it would condense that obviously is beneficial for all. So thank you for that. It's a great report. That's why I've got questions. So extra ones. And my last one was I was really interested by looking at some of the graphs. Things like the glaucoma retina filtering services, and you kind of see this takeoff when somebody, obviously in an area, potentially gets trained. But then you see on the graph below, you sort of drop off again. And I'm just wondering, is there a sort of I put this without it coming out in a funny way, the enthusiasm to get started and catch up, and then it gets down to a more normal level. Or is something else? And are we seeing what we would expect from those that have been trained, or is this where are we with that?
So I think the independent prescribing, because it's well established, is a picture that you can kind of trust. The drop off between January there across all health boards in Wales is probably related to December activity over Christmas. I would expect to see a gradual incline in that as more and more patients are seen. The medical retina and glaucoma, you're right to point out, it's kind of oddities there. I think what the small numbers, particularly in the glaucoma filtering, is starting to take off. I don't know why the owl bar suddenly dropped off compared to all the others starting to take off. I suspect that that's potentially Christmas and the others are just starting, so because it's small numbers, it looks like a big increase.
Yeah,
I think we'll know more with time, but I wouldn't. Yeah, those graphs are helpful. I think the IP one is more robust because we've got higher numbers. I think in terms of the MedRep and glaucoma filtering is still at the early stages of those services being started in health boards, and that's why we're seeing some anomalies because we've got smaller numbers.
right. I thought it might be something like that, but it is useful to have the data to see it. So thank you for that. If there aren't any other questions for Nick, again, we're asked to accept the report as assurance of the quality processes in the role of Commissioner Doctor-Trade. Thank you very much. Which takes us on to 3.1.5, which is the nursing and health professional education update. Martin, I think you're going to do that for us.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just being brief again. First thing I wanted to bring your attention to was the fill rates. September fill rate for nursing was 85%. It's pretty good. We'd like it to be higher. It's against the backdrop of continuing falling applications to nursing courses across the UK, which includes Wales. Our HAW-led initiatives are now accounting for about 30% of the numbers going into pre-reg nurse education. But you will notice this disparity with spring intakes, where we're predicting the uptake will be about 63%. We've not been able to secure mental health field courses in Cardiff University and Swansea University. They're not running those, but Bangor are this year. They did last year. And some good news in that is that our LD nursing fill rate is expected to be 85%. Traditionally, it's been really hard to recruit into LD, and we've done some initiatives there. So we're still working with the universities across all these areas, but overall, we're predicting about a 79% fill rate on nursing. In terms of our commissioning letters, it went down to the wire in terms of notification of the education training plan from Welsh Government, but we did manage to get our commission letters out just in advance of the UCAS deadline, which helps the universities in that planning process. So losing potential students to England because we couldn't issue our commission letters, that risk was averted, which is good news. We have 27 issues in escalation in our performance framework. It's down from 39, so 12 have been removed, and that's primarily because when an issue goes into escalation, we ask for a quality improvement plan from the universities, and we monitor that on a monthly basis. 27 seems quite a lot, but we've got 57 contracts. There's 8,000 students in training. These are predominantly around fill rates and NSS scores, and our actions and the numbers feel proportionate, particularly given the pressures on the system in universities at the moment as well. There are a couple of more serious issues which are in the closed agenda, which we can talk about separately. We're also joined up with MEDA there in terms of the NSS scores, and we look at joint reporting to us in MEDA against those issues in NSS. So that's trying to bring efficiencies into the system. In terms of graduate employment, we are developing a BI dashboard to hold a mirror up to health boards, which basically says, this is what you asked for 3 years ago. This is what we did. These are the numbers graduating. This is the number of jobs that you've advertised dates. This is what you need to be considering advertising to meet that commitment when we commissioned on your behalf. That's been signed off in the next education training oversight group, and then that will be issued on a monthly basis to health boards, to the directors of therapies and healthcare sciences, heads of service, and relevant colleagues in the workforce directorates, so that they can have this up-to-date information of actually what their commitments are against the numbers that we commissioned on their behalf. Just to give you an update as well on streamlining, midway-free streamlining is going live on Monday. We have more roles being advertised on graduates, which is good news for the graduates. Nursing streamlining is being delayed, already been delayed by a week, and it might be delayed by another week. We've currently got in excess of 700 posts to go on to nursing streamlining for the health boards, and there's 1,021 graduates. So over the last week, that's gone up from about 270 to 700, and Lisa and myself and Ian are working with the health boards to make sure they get the right number of jobs on for our graduates. Just very quickly, in terms of postgraduate education, attached to the agenda at section 2 as well was a highlight report for these two, the Education Procurement Board, and there were a couple of red items there. Those items are now green. Enhanced advanced practice tender is now live and will be until the 30th of April. Part-time distance learning is being finalised. We're just in discussions with the Welsh Government whether that's just going to be for the NHS or health and social care. And the independent prescribing has now been evaluated, so that's green as well. And the indemnity query on ultrasound has been sorted. So that's my brief report on nurse and health professional education.
Thank you, Martin, for that update. Any questions from my colleagues? Judith.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Martin. Very thorough report as always. I want to ask a question in context for mental health. I noticed the drop in nursing applications for mental health. If you add that to the issues we've got with psychiatry in terms of the recruitment into medical posts within psychiatry, then you look at the sort of, I suppose, the challenges that we're having with the implementation of the CAAPs. I'm just getting a very uneasy feel about mental health services in Wales. And I just wonder, in the light of the fact we have got the mental health workforce strategy, sort of where all this is coming together to have discussions about, you know, what does this mean? Because otherwise, I think we're at risk of doing it a bit in silos by looking at nurses, looking at CAPs, looking at medicine, and I'm just getting an uneasy feel, and maybe I'm wrong to have that, about mental health services and the ability to provide them moving forward. I mean, tell me if I'm worrying unnecessarily.
Lisa, do you want to go on that?
Thank you, Judith. That's a really good question. It is about actually that joiner and that connectivity, isn't it? So what we actually want to show you is, yes, we have got a mental health workforce plan,
Yeah.
and in that plan, actually all these people actually around that table actually discussing these very issues.
Okay.
So we use it actually right across. So you're absolutely right. So I can assure you actually that, you know, obviously Martin's team is involved with them in that arena. I've got Charlotte from psychology. So they do look at that broader workforce arena and work with us actually and influence it to the commissioning, as well as actually developing it to be the workforce as well. So that's the arena that all that comes together.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask one more question? And it's about Cardiff University and the nursing school. And I know where the timescales are in terms of the intake for this September, but have you got that? When will you have that information, which you'll be able to show any figures?
I think, Judith, we've got an update in close.
In close on that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I forgot that. Yeah.
A quick one from me. It was back on. You had the CAAP stakeholder group. I think it took place on the 20th of February. It was due to. Was there any update from that in terms of how that went?
Really positive. Lots of buy-in. We had representatives from heads of service. We had representatives from professional body, Welsh Government, and it's in our remit letter around embedding caps and working with workforce colleagues. We have workforce planning colleagues involved in that meeting. So the inaugural meeting is good. We've signed off the terms of reference, and there's another meeting scheduled for next week to progress that more. And we're now starting to see some numbers for caps again coming through the latest IMTP workforce plans. So hopeful and fairly confident that there will be a cohort in September. And we're doing lots of work to see where caps can be embedded into the service and where they can make the maximum impact.
And to add to that, obviously we have got the Associate Director for Psychological Therapies in our directorate, which really plays a key part in that arena. Actually, she's doing a vast amount of work, and she's because she's got the experience of how they do work, and they've got a lot of work in terms of understanding and that's fostering as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Court. Again, I think it is worth noting, you know, despite the difficulties in and the reduction in the number of applications for nursing, positive in terms of the improvement into learning disabilities. And
That's massive.
it's such a big change from what we've seen reported in this. Martin.
Yeah, Chair, just to say as well that Lisa and I have been talking about this, and health boards are doing loads to reduce the agency costs, the nurse agency costs, and we have seen that coming down across Wales. But actually, in those mental health and LD more specialist areas, I think they're spending a disproportionate amount of money. So having more LD nurses coming through the system will really, really help with that.
Excellent. Thank you. So thanks for that. If there aren't any other questions, again, we're asked to note the report for assurance of quality, HRIW's commissioned education portfolio, which I think again we've done. Thank you. Thank you for those updates. So we move on to item 3.2, which is the recommended approach to the oversubscription of the 2025 Medical Foundation Programme. I think, Anton, you're presenting on this.
I know. Thank you.
Are you
A
double act?
We
You can do a double act. I always like a double act.
Okay, I'll start. I will hum the tune and Tom can sing the words. Foundation oversubscription is something that we've talked about before, and I'm sure we will talk about again. We are proposing a process for managing the oversubscription for foundation intake August 2025. So the short version of this is that the UK Foundation Programme is again subscribed. SCPs have been asked to take up at least the output from medical school that's coming out from their countries. The board has already approved the establishment of a placeholder list for this year, up to 26 individuals above our 450 allocated. Last year's approach resulted in the lowest fall rate, of the lowest vacancy rate, the lowest vacancy rate anywhere in the UK for Wales, at the expense of some doctors that were allocated very late and to their detriment, really. So we've had a revised approach for this year. There is going to be a smaller pool of placeholders, and our approach will be to make a single allocation to, at a time which is around 6 weeks before the start, that folks could get their rotas, take up free accommodation or subsidised accommodation, and get their plans in place, whilst mitigating against large amount of withdrawals. We are not sure, again, to what the final impact will be. There is a risk, I think, that we end with vacancies this time around. And of course, if we've allocated folks too early now, there is a risk that we have established new posts and vacancies arise somewhere else. But this seems to be a proportional response which mitigates against the risk of many vacancies, and importantly, makes an improved experience for those young doctors coming into our training programs.
Tom, do you want to bring anything in? Apologies, on the agenda it says you're presenting, and on the paper it says.
No, it's
so
fine.
I got a bit
Absolutely fine.
Tom, are there any specific points you want?
Yeah, I think it was, the purpose of bringing people will be aware of the situation. The purpose of bringing it to the committee today was to provide assurance that actually we've met with all of those who were impacted by this last year, and the BMA and those stakeholders. The revised process that we're adopting is based on that feedback of how it impacted last year. The risks this year are considerably lower, and that reflects the fact that we've been mitigating this for some years, ensuring that the number of medical foundation posts we provide as our baseline in Wales exceeds our medical school output. So we are already punching above our weight across the UK in terms of, which is why this year proportionally we have a smaller placeholder this week and establishment posts that are higher. I think Anton is correct. The ask has been a single point, so there's absolute clarity for people. They will get jobs. The date at which they're told is the latest date. The number we have, the vacancies actually may appear well before that date, in which case we can bring that forward. But certainly the final date at which they would be notified is well in advance of all planning arrangements and agreements in terms of parity that people didn't have last year. So we feel this process should do. It will not remove the way those people who are on a placeholder list feel. And we cannot do anything about that other than improve the communication we provide. And the webinar is happening this week. That's one's already happened, and there are further communications scheduled with all of them as this allocation process runs. The data actually comes out this week, and it'll be far fewer than 26.
And just again, because of the lack of understanding from my perspective, you can talk about being a risk, therefore, of vacancies. How is there a mitigation of that, or do we have a second bite for the opportunity, or is that it? If we will just have to carry those if we don't get them?
We continue to. I think we almost certainly will have vacancies, and this relates to long-established trends about who passes finals and who doesn't, and the timing of medical school. What we are doing is establishing a group across Wales in partnership with our medical schools to look at how that is mitigated. However, we do require about a few of those vacancies to accommodate people who need additional time in training. So we will mitigate the impact of any vacancies through that through that.
Thank you. My colleagues have any other questions? No. Okay, thank you for that. It is helpful to have had that update and to understand, you know, the learning and what we're doing differently on the back of that. So very much. So again, we are asked to note the revised approach for the management placeholder list for foundation programme in 2025, which we have duly done. Thank you. So we're moving on then into part 4 of the agenda, which is the strategic matters, and we have the education and training plan for 2026-27. Delighted that we have got Alessandro Di Renato presenting for us. So welcome, and if you'd like to take us through your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I won't go through the whole presentation because I'll take the slide deck as being read, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of slides for everyone, if that's okay. So I just thought it was important just to include an overview of the education training plan, which is slide 2. So if we can just move on to slide 2, please, very briefly. And then what I've done is I've just given on slide 3, sorry to move through a canter. What I've done is just provide an overview of the education training plan timeline with a highlighted section of where we are right now. So currently we've received the initial returns and we're going through the process of data validation. We're also in the process of sharing the emerging intelligence with the different stakeholder groups, both internally and externally. So the intention is to have our professional leads from the HIW having the conversations with the workforce leads within NHS Wales. So if you're able to just pop on to move us to slide 4, please, if possible. And this is just a broken down timeline of that. So the initial draft returns were sent to us on the 31st of January. We're in the process of populating the data, feeding that back to the different workforce leads, and then that's leading into the final submission of the 31st of March. So I just wanted to flag at this point the current process and how it differs to previous years. So previous years, we've taken the approach of having an Excel based spreadsheet version of sending out the initial templates, receiving returns. We've changed that to move more so towards a SharePoint submission. So essentially, it's the same sort of thing. We're collating data rather than a physical, but you know what I mean, physical spreadsheet that we're sending out. We're sharing the SharePoint site. So all of the returns have been done centrally with the HIW. So the intention of that is that we'll have live data per site, and that then links into a refreshed Power BI dashboard. And that information can then be shared with both professional leads internally, and then also taken with the given to the workforce leads within NHS Wales, and they can have that information for each organisation. So the initial data returns are now available for each organisation. So dashboards now available, and this has been done with the intention of informing the narrative templates for each organisation. So as well as the initial data returns, we've also requested each organisation to submit a narrative template, just outlining some of the rationale for some of the decisions, if applicable. So the information then's collated to aid all the professional leads from HIW to facilitate the conversations more so with their respective networks and ask the key questions, then inform the plan. So as well as having a centralized hub for all of the information, this mechanism has also enabled us to ensure that governance elements of the commission numbers are done. So when the numbers and narrative templates are submitted, chief exec of each organisation is copied into an automated email. So we've got that mechanism that when, for example, Cardiff and Vale submit their return, that their chief exec will be copied in. So if you can move on to slide 5. So I'll group this because slide 5 to 11 it's a bit of an overview of our current planning assumptions. So where we're looking at the moment. So this is an overview of the conversations we're having with workforce leads within Wales. So again, we're encouraging conversations with professional leads and maintaining all the data within SharePoint just to ensure that we've got that centralized element with the intention of being data rich, both internally and within the wider NHS Wales network. In the next couple of slides, I've also included information on our planning assumptions just to reflect the overall ministerial priorities. Then in slides 8 to 9, I've just given an overview of some of the conversations that we've had within HIW with our professional leads regarding our planning assumptions to further reflect the Welsh Government priorities. So not within the initial slide deck, but within the additional information towards the end, I've included, I think it's slides 15 to 28, I've included the pest analysis that we did with our internal stakeholders and professional leads, just to understand the key insights linked into the 26-27 plan. So that's in there for information, but that just reflects some of the conversations that we would have had early January, just around what the horizon scan is and the pest analysis, etc., etc. So sorry, I apologize. I'm flipping back and forth between the slides. Are we able to just go back to slide 11, please, just to give a quick overview? Apologies. Sorry. So it's a bit of a busy slide, but it does give a bit of a plan on the page of where the insights that we gathered and the overall process and how the recommendations that we collect. So this is stemmed from the key considerations we've undertaken with some key questions we've asked from health boards and trusts, and it's also how the considerations can then transpose to meet the key needs of each organisation. So again, this is more so for information for stakeholders to go through and disseminate, but I'm happy to take questions on it at the end. If we can move on just to slide 12, please. So this is apologies, starts at the top left, goes up and then down and up, sorry. But this is an overview of the next steps, ranging from immediate short-term steps stemming to the final submission. So as previously mentioned, we're currently at the top left and we're expecting to transition to the draft recommendations consultant phase in April. So we're in the process of providing workforce leads across Wales with their data in the lead up to their final numbers being submitted at the 31st of March. Then all the leads will then give us that information to disseminate the data and then work towards drafting the actual plan. So then post March, we'll have the final or the ongoing consultation with our professional leads within HIW, and then link into to having that final plan produced and go through the HIW governance process. So I'm mindful that there's quite a lot of slides. So I think there's 30 slides. I haven't gone through them all, but I think I've gone through the most pertinent points at the moment linked into where we are in the plan and some of the next steps. Happy to take any questions. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Again, I'll open it out to questions. One from me, it's very helpful to have this presentation and all the other details that we've gone into this morning, but we've had an opportunity to look at. Are there any problems or any things that have come up so far that are taking us on or off track here, or is it all going to plan?
I mean, look, I touch wood, everything's going to plan at the moment. There have been some teething problems because we've gone from, I think it's a bit of a changing culture in terms of having an Excel spreadsheet, like I said, a physical document, but an actual document that workforce leads are able to take, share around and then send back to us. So it's been a bit of an adjustment from that perspective, but we've ensured that our stakeholder engagement has been as much as possible. So we've been engaging with some of our workforce leads across different organisations, and actually just identifying that it's not always the workforce leads that are inputting this information. So we've also been engaging with different stakeholder groups to have that. There has been some not necessarily difficulty, but just uncertainties as to where to put certain information. But again, I'm quite confident that we've had those conversations with the different stakeholder groups. There's the process now of sharing the dashboards with the different workforce leads, which I think is also aiding the conversations to enable their governance process to proceed in a more streamlined way. So essentially, we're just trying to keep as linked in as possible with those different stakeholder groups. But again, because it is a change in the way that we've done things previously, there are always going to be some teething problems. So we have had a lot more stakeholder engagement, which is then subsequently linked into our lessons learned, which we'll carry out for the next year. And then again, keeping the engagement and communications theme, we've been really open and keen to have the conversations with the different workforce leads and the different stakeholder groups. Probably in the early summer when we start populating the plan and we've got all the information in, just to ensure that we've got that process in place for next year, and we're also giving the stakeholders the assurance that they're being heard in the lead up to next year's plan as well.
Thank you. I think Judith, okay, I thought maybe you were responding to that. So Judith.
Yeah, thank you for that, Alexandra. It's really good reading those slides, very comprehensive. And this may be a silly question, but does MEDA have an impact on any of this? I'm still trying to get my head around where they sort of fit, and maybe they don't for this 1 year plan. It's more going to be to do with the longer term strategy.
I think Lisa wants to come in on that.
Judith, we haven't actually shared this question, so I was going to advise Alexandra that in the slide deck, if you're on slide 15, you've still got CETA, and in a way, that is now taken over by MEDA. You have
So
that
right, that's where that links. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
So that was your point,
yeah. But the additional one is the impact of the, we've got to realise really that obviously we've got last year's, well, not last year's plan, the previous plan, and obviously we came back at you with maintain, and it's about understanding the impact.
Can we just, we're having a bit of feedbacky noise. Could people online on mute potentially if they're not talking?
It's effectively the impact of actually having that maintain, and what was it that we actually had to realise in terms of risk, and how that needs to be now considered actually as we develop this plan. So you did ask about what the impacts were, and obviously the economy actually within the NHS is a significant one as well.
Thank you. No other questions. Again, thank you very much for that. As colleagues have said, comprehensive and very interesting presentation. Thank you. Part 5. Motoring through it this morning. Governance matters. So we have the process for contract extensions. Ian, I think you're giving us that. Oh, sorry, I'm getting confused. I thought I'll go off the agenda this time, and now I've got it wrong. All right, Martin, yeah, then I've failed.
So thank you, Chair. This is really important and quite pertinent for us. You will recall that when we go out to tender and we award contracts, it's generally for a fixed term, and sometimes within that total fixed term, we have a period where we can extend the contracts by 1, 2 or 3 years. And we are coming up to the stage on some of the contracts where we need to decide whether we're going to extend or not. And even though we've been through the governance route to get a contract extended, we didn't want to just take extensions as a matter of course to extend. We actually wanted to do something to evaluate whether that contract, whether the demand was still there, whether it was still fit for purpose, and whether that contract was still delivering what we wanted for Wales. And we also wanted to do some evaluation on the quality and the performance of those contracts. So we don't want to create an industry around this because that's not important, and we do collect a lot of this information routinely. But what we wanted to do was to give assurance to the execs, committee and board that when it comes to an extension, if we are recommending we invoke that extension for a number of years, we wanted to look at some set criteria. I've been quite careful not to sort of say it must achieve a certain percentage fill rate or it must be A, B, C or D, because that could be quite restrictive. And also some of our contracts now are, the fill rates are governed by health course releasing staff. So for example, all of our course reg, I'm looking at genomics. The genomics has been a real success. Have the fill rates been quite what we wanted? No, but that's probably not down to the education provider, it's down to the health field not releasing the number of staff. So we've got a process here. I think it's important from a governance perspective that we document why we're extending, and also more importantly, if we're recommending a contract is not extended, actually go through a process to explain why the contract is being recommended not to be extended, i.e. the demand has changed, the contract's not fit for purpose, or the performance has been particularly poor, and then we can go out to tender for something more appropriate in a timely basis. So this is almost a follow-on from the tendering and the evaluation of the award, and it's just an assessment of whether we want to extend or not.
I've got a question, and in fact, in discussion previous, somebody explained it to me, but I don't raise it again in an open meeting, so it could be answered. But given some of the issues that we're aware of with the universities, etc., considering their what they may offer going forward, I ask, what if a provider doesn't want to extend? But I think I was given an answer, but you might want to
So
tell me the position.
So when we go out to tender and in our contracts, the provider does not have the option to withdraw from the contract. The only way the provider can withdraw is if we do not pay them on time, and we always pay them on time. When they sign up to the contract, it basically says that they are signing up to deliver that for the whole duration of the whole contract. So there is not an option for the provider to not extend the contracts, etc. So that is our decision as a commission.
Yeah, and again, I was advised of that, which was very helpful. But again, I thought for some people that might be an unusual position where there wasn't a two-way discussion about extending it. So that is helpful. Thank you.
Just to add that, given the way that the procurement laws are working, our initial contract terms are relatively short terms as well. So I think that's a valid term.
Yeah, no, it is helpful. Thank you, Judith.
Yeah, thank you. Just to extend that, I mean, what if they just breach the contract and they say, no, we're not? Yes, we know we've got a contract, we know we've signed it, but we're just not continuing. Presumably, I know there's all the issues around legal things, and I'm not talking about any particular provider, but is there then a process which kicks in? I don't need to know the detail.
Martin, I'm being advised in my ear that might be something we want to take in the next part of the meeting, but is there anything that you could say no to any particular?
I can just say in general terms that within the contract there is a 5-stage escalation process, and if there are any breaches within that, then we have the processes in place within the contract to escalate that internally.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
There are any questions? I think this was really helpful. I think it's very good to have this outlined in the way it's been done. And if there aren't any further questions, we're asked to support the proposed process for contract extensions and recommend that the board approve the same. Ian.
So could I just make one point and point to it says the majority of data is proposed in those criteria is currently available, and we can conveniently summarise that. The probably units will be making sure that that's nuance for the particular situation where the whole answer is to see something is based on those criteria, but it's appropriate anchored to them. So I just want to send the alarm with that it's not going to be formulated all the time.
And that's really helpful as well. And obviously, I think we're going to be potentially testing this out with the OU contract that was referenced in this document fairly soon. Thank you, and thanks for that clarification. Okay, so part 6 for information. It says Chair's report, stakeholder reference group, but I wasn't able to attend, and I think very kindly Anton is stepping in to give us a quick verbal update, and it does need to be brief. Just so that you don't feel like I'm putting under too much pressure to do that.
Thank you. I was honoured to be able to. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I will be extremely brief. I attended this meeting of the stakeholder reference group on 16th of December, which feels like a lifetime ago. I think 37 souls attended. It was Joel Lewis's last meeting, and the chair pointed that out. There were several updates. The first was from the chief exec. Focusing much around our INTP and the ETP. There was some discussion around the digital capability framework. There was a presentation by Helen Thomas around strategic leadership and NHS culture. a good presentation by Zoe Gibson, the National Retention Lead, on improving staff retention across Wales. There was no other business, and that was the very, very brief report of the stakeholder event on the 16th of December.
And the next meeting is scheduled for March this month, and I will be able to attend that. So thank you very much for that. I do appreciate that. Very much that. So that brings us to part 7, which is part we begin to close down this meeting. I haven't been advised of any other business. There isn't any. In which case, I can confirm that the date of next meeting of this committee is the 15th of May. And then it is for me to complete, in accordance with the provision of section 1(2) of the Public Bodies Admissions to Meetings Act 1960, it shall be resolved that representatives of the press and other members of the public be excluded from the latter part of the meeting on the grounds that it would be prejudicial to the public interest due to the confidential nature of the business transacted. This section of the meeting is to be held in private session. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay. I'm just gonna. Are we close this one down now?